So Dieter, let's start with you. We've talked a lot about the printed circuit board industry, both off camera and on camera. Why do you think it's so critical, and what is the current state of affairs?
We just finished the statistics, or the global statistics for the PCB industry, and Europe only has a share of 2.2% of global PCB manufacturing, compared, for example, to 3.8% in the United States. Lately we have been talking about the CHIPS Act and how critical it is that we only have 10% of global supply being manufactured in Europe. But in actual fact, the situation in Europe and in the United States regarding printed circuit boards is much worse. And we all know a semiconductor is insufficient if it doesn't have a PCB. So we need to now, we have done the second step before we did the first by just looking at the CHIPS Act. Now we need to take the first step and do something about this dependency on Far Eastern manufacturing. And the objective is not to bring back 100% of the manufacturing, but we should be able to manufacture printed circuit board for the European critical infrastructure in Europe.
Okay, and you talk about infrastructure. Dirk, you made some really good points off camera about the importance of government-supported institutions actually committing to buying as much of their materials, including their printed circuit boards, in Europe. How significant do you think an initiative like that might be?
I think it's very significant because you tackle the problem at the source. And the source is our engineers, is our young people learning to become an engineer tomorrow. And if they grow up in their studies with European suppliers, at least they know us. And now they don't. Yeah. So and actually the European Commission they give the good example in many things they do. If their institutions buy something, they buy European origin. It's a rule already for 30-40 years. So why not do that in all the countries? And that would already help, because then our students will grow up with boards from here, with suppliers from here, unless now they grow up with online suppliers from China.
Yeah, no, it makes absolute sense. Michael, you made a very good point when we were talking earlier about this level of the industry and not just bringing back but stemming the decline. If the decline continues, there's a kind of a critical mass ecosystem problem, isn't it, where below a certain size you end up with an industry that's not well supported.
Yeah, that's the problem. I think we are already at that point of the critical mass. If our industry gets smaller and smaller, our suppliers here will be no longer interested in supplying machines, chemistry, dry film, whatever to us. I see this as a major problem in the future, that we as a mid-sized company can source most of our products in Europe, because we are already forced to get some materials from Asia. For example, dry film, a lot of the stuff is coming from Asia. Base laminate is coming, a lot of stuff from Asia, and also, but if you have to go for equipment for machines, it's going to be really, really difficult.
Yes.
And Michael, you're actively trying to select European manufacturers all the way through your supply chain, as your customers do.
Yes, I mean that's one thing. We just bought a new etching machine from a German supplier. I could have saved 300,000 euros if I would have bought a Chinese machine. But I mean, on one side we are telling our customers buy German, so we have to do the same. And also, I mean, you have to look at the whole package. If you look for equipment or if you look for a PCB, you not only look at the price, look at the whole package, service quality. You get someone when you need someone, and you don't have to wait for 2 weeks or whatever. So I think that's the critical point also for most of our customers. If they need support, they need it now and not in 2 weeks.
Yeah, that's walking the walk rather than just the talk. Dirk, with respect to your business, when you look at your customers, obviously most of them are European, but when you look further down your supply chain, are you able to maintain a strong European presence there?
Yes, we only do business in Europe, and like Michael, we also buy our stuff in Europe. What the machines are concerned, of course, the laminates, not all of them. We try to buy as much as possible locally, but there is not much left in that respect here in Europe anymore. So. And on many fronts, also the point that I was making earlier to do something about students and so on. There also we support students. We even have student accounts in Eurocircuits, and rather than giving $30 to DHL to bring the boards from China to here and pay $5 for the boards, why not give me $35 and then it's a lot more sustainable. You don't have to fly 10,000 kilometers, the boards from the other side of the world over here. I mean, you can buy them at the same student price.
Yeah, and it's interesting you talk about that because the supply chain has a responsibility in terms of sustainability and so forth, and that's something that not just the Europeans care about, but it's a financial burden on your business, and it's something that is perhaps tilting the playing field a little bit against you in terms of Asian competition. Dieter, I wanted to ask you, with your role at IPC, but also all the other trade associations you work with, the government activity and lobbying you're involved with, what can associations do, what can government do to try and stem this tide and to try and increase? And Michael's smiling.
Lower the bureaucracy. I mean, that's a total disaster. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. Well. At the moment, what we do, we are collecting all the data. It is difficult to convince politicians in Brussels because you have all different kind of people there. You have people who represent the unions, and they all have a different target. Yeah, but we first of all need to bring all of them on a common denominator and make sure this is about. Making sure we are able in Europe to manufacture critical infrastructure electronics in Europe, yeah, and that goes all the way along the supply chain, yeah, and there is a long way to go, and we are at the moment focusing on PCBs and EMS. But that is not sufficient. In the next step, we'll have to focus on laminates. Yeah? And when we talk about laminates, we have to talk about resins. We have to talk about copper foil. We have to talk about glass fabric. All of that is an issue, and with some of that we see solutions. But the overall problem is always pricing. Yeah, not only. European PCBs are more expensive than Chinese. European laminates are more expensive than Chinese laminates. And so it goes down the drain. And we need to pull that together. And we have a lot of associations in Europe which we try to combine to show up in Brussels as a united force with united strengths, and Dirk and Michael are helping on that as well with their input to convince the European Union. And we don't have much time. Next year we're going to have elections in Europe. So the people we talk to in 2 years might be totally different than the ones we talk to at the moment. Yeah. And that's why time is of the essence.
Yeah, we need to move on it. You took a sharp intake of breath as Dieter was talking there. Are you exasperated? Do you believe these things can happen?
I don't know if things can happen. We have to work on it. If we don't work on it, things will not going to happen. But as an example, if we buy laminate from Asia, we have to pay import duty. If our customers buy finished boards, they don't pay anything. So I mean, that would be a good starting point to level out. I mean, we are already more expensive in Europe, but we shoot ourselves in the foot. It's a little bit difficult, but we have to work and we have to talk to as many people as possible that the situation will change, because bureaucracy will kill us in Germany. I'm waiting. I have a new machine since 4 months in my shop. I'm still waiting for the approval. There's not a single drop of chemistry inside because I'm not allowed to. In this time in China, nobody's waiting 4 months for an approval. It's difficult, and we have to change this, and we have to change this fast.
Yeah, and you have to change for legislation and initiatives that add value, not legislation and initiatives that slow you down and create bureaucracy. You talked about a few things when we were having a coffee earlier that are just simple, inexpensive things that that government can do, and you talked a little bit about, at least in the education system, but it goes beyond that. What do you wish the government would do to make it feel like a level playing field for the industry? Is it as simple as a tariff on imported printed circuit boards?
Well, what the Americans are trying to do is, of course, is a good idea, and say, okay, if you buy European, you can deduct 25% of the invoice from your taxes. That would be, of course, very good. I think that would level the playing field in one hit. But there are many other things that politics can do. I mean, we are also assembling prototypes, and one of the biggest worries is always to have a good database of components. So if like many things in food, if the government would say, okay, we make one joint database of components, and everybody who wants to bring a component into the market needs to deposit the technical specifications of that component in a unified database that everybody can access, that would be an amazing thing. And I think there is not a lot that you need for that, only a little bit of political.
Yeah, well, political courage is exactly it, isn't it? And I think the point you make about political courage, about the the people in government growing some, is really significant. But I also think, we're talking about having a voice. You talk about the critical mass of the industry. Smaller the industry becomes, the smaller our voice becomes. So there is there's an urgency in that, in terms of, let's make sure the industry doesn't get any smaller, because then it will have less of a voice. Dieter, I'm going to give you the final word. Not the final 1,000 words, the final word. What do you think can be done, and what do you think is the most urgent need?
The most urgent need is that the different associations over here in Europe join forces and work together. And we all know that we need to rush. We are all working heavily on it with the support of many active players in the industry. And I'm convinced we're going to achieve something. I cannot guarantee whether it's going to be satisfactory to what we are looking for. But it's a first step, and we need to all take it together.
Yeah, and take that initiative with some urgency, but as you say, with a single voice, because if every association lobbies separately, they'll all lobby for something different, and they'll end up with a bunch of voices that are not really understood and don't have clarity. Gentlemen, thanks for your input. It's been really interesting today to understand where the industry is now. I started my career in printed circuit boards in the 80s, and it was a very different world in Europe back then. So I hope we can return towards some of those halcyon days.